What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Essential Scares podcast, the only show that dares to ask the question, is it essential? I am your host, Corbin, and with me today, as always, is Big Teeth Bobby.
Praise be the god Plutonium.
And, of course, Alan.
Good evening.
That was a visual joke for everybody that's listening.
Doing a lot of visual jokes. Maybe watch the YouTube video of this podcast. A lot of visual bits.
We have got quite a show ahead of us. So we are going to be discussing the middle entry in John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy, Prince of Darkness.
Yeah, real weird that we're doing the middle one first.
It's almost like it doesn't actually matter. Before we get into it, Bobby has a spoiler warning.
I do. This will serve as your first one and only spoiler warning for John Carpenter's The Prince of Darkness. If you don't want this film spoiled for you, please skip the time code ahead to view our spoiler-free essential discussion. Gentlemen, bow your heads. Bow your heads. Bow your head. All hail Daddy Carpenter. Blessed be his holy name. Forgive us for whatever ice-cold takes Alan may have. Amen. Myself. So this movie's fucking dope, and I like it a whole bunch. John Carpenter, as always, can do no wrong. He's a god. He's a golden god. And, just every movie you should watch. It's weird that this one, and this is kind of why I want to go off on this. It's weird that in the Apocalypse trilogy, this seems to be the least known and least watched entry. Despite it being legit, like, just a dope-ass flick.
Mm-hmm.
What are the other two entries?
The Thing and Beyond the Mouth of Madness, I think it's called.
At the Mouth of Madness?
Out the Mouth of Madness, yeah.
Which I've also never seen.
Oh, At the Mouth of Madness is also super cool.
Yeah.
I watched this. Let me forewarning. I watched this movie. Me and producer Mallory, after we got engaged, we bought a home. And the day before me and her bought the home, and what you see in the background behind me in the YouTube video, is the night of, I was told by a good friend to watch this movie. And so I sat in an empty apartment alone, drinking Tall Boys of Truly, and just watched this movie on a phone screen. And those VHS tapes like the dream bits, stuck in my memory as just truly, truly horrifying. Just this idea of, like, we're contacting you from the future. This is not a dream, even though it looks like a dream. You must save the world. Like, that is truly, like, a terrifying thought, because you wake up with, like, a fuzzy notion of, like, something happened and you don't fully get it. And so that's stuck in my head because I was in an empty apartment on a bare mattress, like, while that was happening. I felt so dirty and grungy and gross, and then watching this movie, it was just so good.
I had a similar reaction, but to the math bits, because I'm a fucking nerd. When
Big
they're
old
like,
dork.
these equations don't exist back then, and then later in the film, they're like, we don't even know what the fuck this is. These equations don't make sense in our time, which that to me is like, this movie does atmosphere in a way that, and lore in a way that I really did enjoy, because it just drops like little bits like that, like, oh hey, we don't really know why this math, we don't know what this does. We have no idea what these equations are. It doesn't make any sense to us, which is hilarious and terrifying in a very, like, cerebral way.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole movie, right? I mean, I think that a big part of why this movie works is because throughout the course of the film, it's just, like, dropping you little bits that really explain, like, the world, the lore, the universe, like, exactly what's going on. So if you're paying attention, not even super in-depth, but, like, just as much as you would watching a normal movie, you end up being very much enveloped by the dread that they're trying to put on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think just to that point, right, when we talk about, like, it's the melding of two worlds and everybody being like, holy shit, we're fucked, right? it's the crisis of faith. It's simultaneously a crisis of faith by the priest and all of these like agnostic atheist doctoral students being like, and even like the scientist, Barack, who like they even established in the beginning like he is debating this priest almost assuredly about the existence of God, and he becomes like this person of faith while the priest is like, I don't know, like. There's just this awesome like crisis of people like missing each other on their way to doubt versus truth.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the cast of characters, perfectly represents so many points along the spectrum of faith, not only in God and religion, but also like the faith in their technology at the time. And you have these characters that are very much against what they're actually doing, but are very into like the technology side, like what's his name, Walter, right?
Yeah.
Who is like, oh, this is a big joke the whole time until presented with it in his face. And then you have the priest, right, who believed in it so much that he's now like rebounded to the other side, like having this complete crisis of belief. And I think it really, really works, and I think that it works at telling a religious story and a very modern at the time tech horror also.
Yeah.
I have a sinful thought, pun intended. One of the thoughts I had when I finished this movie, Bobby, you're about to hate what I'm going to say, is how would this movie look if remade in a context of 2021 in terms of the better understanding we have of things like quantum mechanics, of the fact that we discovered the Higgs boson, like stuff like to me, one of my thoughts was it'd be interesting to see this kind of story playing with even more knowledge of advanced science that just wasn't known in 1986 when this movie came out. I don't know that it would necessarily work, but I'm a nerd for stupid science stuff.
Yeah.
Like when they're talking like, we discovered the supernova, which is like, oh my God, the fact that like, we take shit like that for granted because it's been around our entire existence and lives. But the idea of maybe going even more in depth with the science side of things, that I think is something that would have spoken to me a little more deeply.
Why would I hate this? This is
I just would assume the idea of remaking anything by our boy John Carpenter is like just death.
No. So, I mean, John Carpenter would just remake it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, right, one of John Carpenter's most legendary movies of all time is a remake, The Thing, right?
I know.
And another one of the really good movies he produced was Halloween 2018, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So
I still need to watch that.
Also, I think that the core of the movie would probably be identical. I think that part of why this movie works is that they brush off a lot of the science, right?
Yeah.
The core science message is basically that the anti-God lives between the atoms. So, like, that's as much science as is actually required, right? And that
but I
sentence...
want more science.
That sentence works
That's
today.
a me thing, though. I fully acknowledge that.
That sentence works today as much as it worked then. And I think that's the core of the horror, right? Is that evil is everywhere. Evil is, like, fully surrounding you. And that is the way that they explain both, like, the religious horror and the tech horror. And I think that works today just as much. It would be the same.
It's a basic law of physics that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And the idea for every particle that is God, there is every particle that is anti-God, right? And I think that the idea is like, I'm a full disclosure, I am a spiritual and for all of my dang old lefty takes, shockingly religious person. And the person who
we've made that clear on if this isn't your first episode, you probably would know that about us already.
But
see our gushing over Exorcist 3, for example.
True. But my point is the person who told me to watch this movie is a decidedly anti-theist. And both of us, and he was like, "Oh, I want to hear your description of this movie because it's so heretical," right? And I came into this, I'm like, I actually kind of like this idea of God, even. Like, this idea that, like, God, like, because it maintains the idea of even, like, most ideas of, like, the higher power being omnipresent, omnipotent, of just being, like, God exists in all living things, and the anti-God exists in the space between. Is, like, it's, there is this really interesting thought of, like, and like the anti-God is trying to become the space, and trying to switch places. It's very interesting, right? And I think it gives something
that's a core religious idea, right? Like the fight is basically just God and the devil fighting over souls, like re-personified.
And I think this movie probably will piss off a lot of very dogmatic people, but people who are looking for a religious core in this will not be upset in the same way where, like, people who are non-religious would be like, this is kind of a cool little interesting thing, because I think even non-religious people like the idea of religious themes because they're interesting. And so that, like, we talk a lot about people walking failure tightropes, and it's really nice to see a movie walking the success tightrope for once.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because fuck, dude, and the characters, like, I wrote like this movie suffers a little bit from, like, what is the Asian guy's name? Walter's, like, latent homophobia, and, like, the way that's, like, kind of just, like, brushed off. But, like, this movie is shockingly, like, diverse for a movie that comes out in 1985. Like,
well, and I think that's because it's John Carpenter, right? I mean, he's coming right off of Big Trouble in Little China when he made this. And
that's fair.
You know, I think that he in a lot of ways was pretty progressive. I think that horror in general is pretty progressive. I think I've said that before. But no, definitely the cast absolutely is. And I wonder, like, if it weren't for Big Trouble in Little China, how would those characters have differed? Because we know that John Carpenter wrote those roles for them, right? Specifically. So of course, you know, if he hadn't worked with them already, you know, would that have worked quite the same way? I don't know. Probably. What was the I don't remember his name. Calder. He's a great, you know, character as well, and I think that my favorite thing about him. Alan, do you remember which character that is? Calder.
Not the priest. Or
Calder's the black guy.
Calder's the black guy. Yeah.
Okay.
He's the one that, like,
something from him.
Yeah. So my favorite thing about him is that there's a lot of, like, imagery in this movie about mirrors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there ends up being this implication, sort of, that similar to other horror movies, but with mirrors, right? That, like, when you're looking at a mirror, you're almost seeing, like, the other version of you, right? Like the version of you that the anti-God would control. And I think that there's this implication that when Calder is looking in the mirror and crying to himself, as he's already been possessed by the anti-God, that he's then seeing what he was before. And I think that's very powerful. You know, it's scary. There's a natural level of horror there, and also, like, he totally kills it. Maybe the best acting in the whole movie, honestly.
And then following that up with that,
for sure,
the amazing Grace coming up the stairs to then slit his own, like that. That's just top 10 right there in terms of horror acting in a way.
Yeah.
Like, it just works so well, that whole sequence with him.
Well, and again, like, I know Corbin already said it, but just to double, like, there is something profoundly terrifying of, like, it's almost like, because, like, the possessed Calder is, like, laughing and, like, enjoying himself, but, like, there's almost like there's he's really still in there, and so it's, like, he's he's making the sound of laughter while like horrifyingly crying is like you said, it's just incredibly well acted, and I think, like, he is truly the most viscerally terrifying, like, character and all of it. Just like, fuck, this is what it would truly feel like to be, like, stuck. Or, like, what was the other dude? The dude who gets, like, stabbed by the homeless
about
person.
19 times. That was Wyndham, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds
the
right.
guy who's oops all bugs.
Yeah. That scene is fucking terrifying. I have some news for you.
Yes.
And you're not going to like it. Like, that is like just
and
how...
on top of that, the old lady that stabs him earlier, when she talks to, I think it's the priest, she has demon double voice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That shit was terrifying. Just like, because it's so... It happens, and then they move right past it. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just, hey, that was scary, and then they just keep going. Without you, like... Yeah. You have to, like, take a second to go, huh? And I like that a lot.
Is what we call a slow burn.
Yeah.
And Burn Slow does it. But also manages to get kills throughout that are like the Alice Cooper stabbing the dude with the bike.
I didn't realize it was him at first. After he stabbed the dude, I wrote down, I was like, wait a minute, is this Alice Cooper?
It's Alice Cooper, baby.
First time I saw him, I was like, what? And I immediately Googled, and I was like, is Alice Cooper in Prince of
Alice
Darkness?
Cooper's a homeless man with, like, jaundice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, that kill that he did was like an old stage trick that he did on tour in the 80s, and that's like he had asked John Carpenter to like be in a movie, and John Carpenter was like, sure, but I have to be allowed to use that gag.
That seems like a pretty fair trade.
I love that.
Yeah.
and honestly, used to the best effect, right? Because like
it was great.
Because like it made sense because he was like just like some homeless dude with half a bike and like it's like you kind of buy into that a little bit. Yeah, you don't question why he's getting stabbed with half a bike.
Right. I actually have a question for you guys. Sure. On the show we talk a lot about what things mean, deeper level stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
One note that I wrote down that I couldn't quite figure out: what exactly is the purpose behind all of the initial possessed being homeless? What is the messaging there?
So I kind of cheated a little bit because I watched an interview that was on Plex of Carpenter.
That's not cheating. I try to look stuff up. Yeah, I just didn't look that up, so I was like, I'll just ask them.
I'm trying to remember how he explained it. I think it was something like the idea of those people were so much more easily, because I want to say his exact wording was something to the effect of these were people with schizophrenia.
Yeah, they mentioned that.
I mean, obviously that's a very common. No. Homeless and mental health problems are very
with the chronically
tied
homeless.
Together.
Yes,
it's hard to say that one doesn't exist. Well, maybe not one doesn't exist without the other, but it's like a square rectangle situation. You know what I mean there?
Yeah.
Like not all rectangles are squares, but all squares are rectangles.
For the chronically homeless, typically there has to be some sort of mental health issues.
Yeah.
Or like, and specifically like paranoid schizophrenia is really common in people who are chronically homeless because they have a certain thought that somebody somewhere is out to get them, and so they keep on the move.
But it was something in that interview where he was like, the idea of being controllable and more susceptible. I don't remember exactly what it was because I just watched it briefly.
Yeah. I mean, this makes sense. I mean, like, I understand why they started with,
I don't know that there's anything more deep than that. I don't know.
I think it's one of those things of, like, it's an abandoned church. We're talking about the chronically homeless. They're more likely to be involved with it, right? It's the forgotten masses, the forgotten even by God type thing. There's a lot that you can, like... It can even be, if you want it to be a challenge to the opulence of the Catholic Church at the time, because we go through as three good old Catholic boys, we know that we go through stages of, like, the church being, like, super rich and opulent versus the time where we've practiced piety and actually kind of practiced what Catholics preach. And it goes back and forth from time to time. There's a lot that can be said there, but I think the reality of it is it's a good tool. And if you make people paranoid schizophrenics, it makes them oogie boogie scarier. And then you can also make it that they're more easily controlled. And then when you talk about, like, people who have, like, like they did with like people who have like paranoid schizophrenia and OCD. You're typically living life in patterns, and the fact that they're not living in patterns is scary. So that would be my thought on the deeper message. I'm pretty sure Daddy Carpenter probably has a better idea.
Well, I had no idea. I just wrote down what's the deal with the homeless. So I'm pretty satisfied.
I feel like I heard that in a Jerry Seinfeld stand-up special at some point.
Hey, what's the deal with the homeless?
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll get to that when we get to what we're up to. You too? Hell yeah.
For the first time ever.
Oh.
I know. We'll get to that later.
But no, I don't know. Like, it works though, right? Like, just the idea of like.
No, it worked for me. I was just like, I knew that there was intent, right? It was clear that there is intent. It's clear that they were chosen for a reason, that there was a metaphor there. And I felt like it was the only aspect of the movie that I wasn't able to unwrap. Like, the only, like, obvious thing, you know, there's always like little bits, you know. But yeah, anyway, let's move on. Let's move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alan, I wanted to talk to you about this specifically because you had some choice comments when we watched Nightmare on Elm Street. How did you feel about this score? He doesn't even remember it.
I mean, that kind of says all it needs to say, right? I mean, it was there, I guess.
So
I can't think of anything that really, like, stands out to me.
Okay.
As much, to be honest. I mean,
it perfectly marries the two major themes of this film, Alan.
That's what I wrote down. I think Bobby.
Oh, you did? I skimmed your review, so I don't. Yeah.
I think that the score I wrote down several times. The score is a perfect combination, right, of modern at the time technology-based music with the synth, and then also like very classical religious sounding like orchestra work and chanting, and like they are married and stacked on top of each other, and sometimes they're in scenes that are in opposition to what is on the screen. And I think that the soundtrack is so intentional. I think it's core to why the movie works.
It combines it's like Hellraiser meets Nightmare on Elm Street, and it fucking owns.
I love it.
I mean, it definitely. I mean, if I remember correctly, my criticism in Nightmare was it was borderline just too much and constant, and I hated it. Because remember, Alan hates 80s synth, confirmed.
I don't get that, dude. It's like,
I'm sorry, it just doesn't click for me. But
this movie had score the whole. There's almost no quiet parts.
Yeah,
but it didn't bother me here, and I can't necessarily tell you why that is. But where in Nightmare on Elm Street it was noticeable and I didn't like it, in this movie I guess it just blended into the background radiation of the movie for me.
I feel like that's
which
like close
I
to a
think is kind of like
a
weird backhanded compliment, if I'm being honest. It didn't bother me enough to notice it in a negative way, but it wasn't impactful for me personally while watching the film. Which I think it's better than what I said about Nightmare, because Nightmare didn't work for me one bit. But
I don't get that still. I don't want to make this about Nightmare's soundtrack, but
it owns bones. Let me just answer your question. This soundtrack owns bones. And like, again, Big Daddy Carpenter can do no wrong and never will he. But like, there's, like you said, like you said it in your written review on Letterboxd for our 33 days of Halloween written reviews. Go read Alan and Corbin's for bad takes and mine for the best. They're also the shortest, baby. Let's go.
We've got like short, medium, long between Bobby, myself, and Corbin. It's honestly great. Like, it's a good mix-up.
I basically write a spoiler warning joke and then say, hey, this is why I like this movie, and then done. It's great. But it really does marry the two themes, like the sciencey with the tech synth, and then like this weird orchestral. Like it's sick. It's good. It works. I also want to talk about, and we can go into it, but like you can finish if you have something else you have to say about the soundtrack.
Nope, go for it.
But like, I typically don't super notice the like the set design, right? But there's something about the location and like the set design on this film that just really fucks me up.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea of like there being this underground basement where like a liquid antichrist exists, and like the way that they have like the crosses everywhere, and the way that they do like we'll also get to some of the special effects because the way they work with the liquid is just truly terrifying.
Awesome.
Yeah, but like
clear lessons learned from Nightmare on Elm Street, by the way. True.
But like just like that set, the set where the anti-god particle is freaks me out every time I see it.
Yeah,
like that in the front of the building. But yeah.
it's great. I mean, I feel like I don't want to keep harping on the same point, right? But part of why the interiors work so well is because you have this very old, clearly not well taken care of church with a shocking amount of crucifixes at times.
Yeah.
But then because they're doing science, right? There's like computers and wires and like stuff all over. And so you again have this very consistent cross section. Techno faith, I wrote down in my in my notes. And I think that if you're somebody who's even casually Christian, you know that it's not supposed to look like that. And even like seeing, for example, like just the canister with the Antichrist inside, that's scary enough as it is, but it's just only one step outside of the realm of things that you expect to be in like the church basement, right? But then once
because it only looks slightly different than like a chalice, even just as a simple example. Like,
they tell you it's like 7 million years old, and you're like, okay.
I believe that. Yeah, the rust is 7 million years old, and you're like, well, yeah, probably.
But once you have all that tech, the modern at the time technology, and they're like, it goes like a step further to like almost defiling the church in its own way, like almost like for the betterment. And I think that if you're somebody who is on that side of the aisle, it adds to the horror of like the imagery, even if you don't realize it.
One other compliment to add to this is, even though this is a movie that is contemporary to the technology of the 80s, while it's dated, it didn't feel dated, if that makes any sense. At least it didn't really like stand out to me as so preposterous. And I think part of that is like, you see, I forget the character's name, but she is the gonna get a doctorate in theology and is translating
Lisa.
The book. Lisa.
Yeah, this scene. Yes, I was actually about to talk about this.
You see her using a computer, and is it a modern computer? By no means, but it's still like, I think having some technology that we can very clearly latch onto, like, I know exactly kind of where you're going there. It doesn't feel old, even though by all definition, I mean,
almost 40 years.
Ancient. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it's older than all of us.
I totally agree.
By a landslide.
Because, like, you see the work that they're doing. The only time you actually see them interacting with the technology, they're doing something that you have seen in a one-to-one example of today. And you can just imagine, like, if they were just working on a flat screen, it would look identical. So no big deal.
Exactly.
it would be
spike thing. Is
or no, it'd be like
interaction.
Lisa's stuff would just be a quarter of the screen in a chat bubble rather than like full screen stuff. Yeah. That scene though, okay, so this movie is so fucking cool. The scene where Lisa, like, after Lisa has gotten possessed and Calder comes in, it's right when Calder gets possessed, and it's just Lisa just like, I live. The Holy Spirit won't save you, the God Plutonium won't save you. In fact, you won't be saved. It's just like, just that scene is so fucking scary. Like, just this idea, and like, because she's not even looking, she's just like, she's not even looking at the book, she's just looking away, and it's just like, fuck. And you come to love Calder very quickly at that moment, even in that scene, because he's barely a thing before then, but he's just like, he just seems like a nice guy. He's like, Lisa, Mona Lisa, like, it's just like, yeah, hell yeah, dude, you're cool. No.
I want to jump off that and just ask. This was another thing I was unsure of.
Yes.
When they get possessed, right? It's like obviously it's like an organic, compound, right? That's happening. When Calder is possessed, it's very sexual, and it's the only time.
Why is that?
Yeah, why is that?
I didn't pick up on that.
He's like straight up like mouth to mouth, and she's just like gagging into his mouth, obviously. But you don't see it because they're open mouth kissing, basically, right? There's like an element of like rape there. And with every other possession, they're like spitting the liquid at them from a distance. You see it occurring. But with them, it's very intimate. And
because that wrote it down. It wasn't Lisa that infected her. It was the
first chick, the first infected. Yeah,
yeah, the chosen one. Well, she wasn't the chosen one, but that's neither here nor there.
If I had, I think, I personally with that, I don't know. Maybe there is an extra meaning behind it, but it feels like that is an even scarier moment. Just for the sake of like, it's just so slow. Like, and I think that's more of what it is. I think it's more of like that scene in general is just so slow and deliberate, and you want it to end and you want it to look away, and like it's one of those like almost mercifully it's not gory, but you're still like, no, like it's happening and nobody can stop it and no one's paying enough attention to see what's happening here. They're all so focused. I don't think it has any deeper meaning, and if it does, Big Daddy Carpenter has probably already told us. So
I have a hot take.
Okay,
yeah.
I think a potential hot take.
Okay, I'm about to kill you.
I kind of hated the water shot possession thing.
Really?
It's fun.
The first time it happened, I laughed. I laughed hard with her just getting shot in the mouth with water. Like that to me it wasn't played for laughs, but I definitely laughed at it, and that kind of first time seeing it and me immediately laughing instead of going like, I think it just kind of set it on the wrong path for me for the whole movie.
See, I don't get
from that point onward, I just was laughing when they were just like, and shooting water at people. Like, it just was funny to me as opposed to scary.
I get if like it was like if it wasn't like that deliberate shot of it, like the water sinking into the ceiling,
that worked for me.
I know, but then like the whole idea, and like right afterwards you're like it was a millisecond of like power and diameter shooting a straight shot that it seems almost impossible, defies all laws of physics. Like all of that happens so quickly in succession of one another that it was like, it's like one of those like, oh yikes. Like I don't know. It just, I guess for me, it maybe could just be in my head. That effect looks, I think that effect for me, for it to work, has to be something kind of different than this was a jet of water shot at an actor. You know what I mean? I couldn't get that out of my head after seeing it. Like it didn't really work for me at the practical effect level. And I'm not saying by any means that making it a CGI effect would have done it any sort of service. If anything, that would have made it much worse because it would have aged significantly worse. But that just didn't work for me at all. Because it just, I couldn't stop laughing when it happened, and I also couldn't stop going, well, that was a jet stream shot at somebody. Like, it kind of broke that a bit of immersion for me.
So, question for you.
Yep.
There are one or two shots of, I forget the character's name, the chick that has the mark of the beast.
Give me a second. I think I know this. Wait, I'm cheating.
It's
Kelly.
Okay. You're correct.
He's correct, yep.
Kelly is the name.
Kelly. So there's a scene, one or two shots when Kelly is laying on the bed, and the anti-god, the Satan goo, is just pouring out of her mouth.
Pouring into her. It's even scary. It's pouring into her.
Yes.
That worked for you?
And it's making her stomach rise. I literally wrote down, do we have a chest burster situation going on here? Like, what's about to happen?
Yeah.
That worked exceedingly well for me.
Okay. So it's not the concept. It's just
it was the
practical
execution.
effect. Okay.
Yeah. just didn't work for me.
I disagree, because it did work for me, but I totally see why like that particular like thing would be something to point out.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of
Alan over here. Whew.
I know, not nearly as ice cold as we were expecting. Yeah. Sorry, speaking of practical effects, Bug Boy, what a great effect.
I don't want to talk about Bug Boy because we didn't actually get a chance to talk about this. My favorite bit about all of this is the stuff that's recorded on VHS.
Oh, great stuff.
Like, I just want to talk about what?
I loved it.
Oh yeah, Alan, how did you feel about it?
Actually, so very into that.
Okay.
Who was the character we were seeing originally at the entrance of the church? Oh, is that supposed to be just straight up the anti-god?
Okay, like personified, or like the Satan, right? But with the
yeah,
and and then at the end it changes because she was sent through the mirror.
Are we supposed to believe that's real?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. I didn't know if we had like a end of Friday the 13th part 3, like this couldn't possibly happen kind of a thing. Or if it was supposed to be played as like, no, he is getting the message, and it is, because I think they never really finished the year, because all we hear is 1999 and then it gets cut off.
No, the last one they say is 1999.
Oh, okay.
99, which is important because it was the turn of the millennium, and that was a scary time at back then. And,
absolutely.
There were some like religious horror aspects of like turning the page to the year 2000. I think that if you buy in to the rest of the visions being true, which the movie asks you to do that because they all discuss it, then you have to believe that very last one is true, because nothing has changed except for that one small thing.
So question for you then, Bobby.
Yes.
Does that play out, without spoiling per se, does that play out at all in the sequel?
There is no sequel.
Oh, okay.
Let me answer your question. Is this a sequel to the Thing?
Okay, so let me be clear. No. We talked about the Apocalypse trilogy here, right?
That was a misunderstanding on my part.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But this is important because I went into watching the Apocalypse trilogy thinking that there was a thread between the three. The thread is the end of this movie. All the end of these movies could be reasonably seen as the end of the world.
Okay,
that's the whole point. Yeah.
So it's more so like when you say Apocalypse trilogy, it's more like I made 3 movies where the apocalypse kind of basically starts to happen.
It's kind of
fun.
It's a trilogy in the same way that the Cornetto trilogy is a trilogy, right? Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, At World. Like those movies clearly do not have anything to do with each other, but it's just similar in theme and similar in like creative team. Sense. And that's what John Carpenter calls it, the Apocalypse trilogy, right? Like otherwise, people wouldn't call it that. It would just be 3 movies that John Carpenter made. I mean, it's not like these are the only movies he makes about the end of the world. But for him, these are those 3.
Okay. Yeah. Makes more sense.
Okay. So back to my thought about the VHS bits. Scariest bits of the movie, right?
I don't think it was for me. I did think it worked, but not the scariest. For me,
absolutely. For me, absolutely. We can talk about the scariest bits because I think this is a good point. Absolutely the scariest bits. Right, there's something about like the way it's shot too. It's clearly shot on like a camcorder. It just reminds me of like cell phone footage, in that way, like where it's very much just like, and like the way that like it's just moving and it's jerky, and you hear like the 1999 or this is not a dream. Our technology cannot get you in time, and like this like weird like. And you get it, and like it's like they have like the Christ pose even at the end. It's just like, fuck, I'm so scared. And then it shuts off. So and like
the abruptness of it works so well to just be like, and they're awake.
There's certain like nothing. Well, and they talk about how like time is not linear, but like we're still human beings, so we perceive time in a linear fashion. And they're not to get like super heady with it. So like you can't help but feel the inevitability of it too. It's just so well done, and it just fucks me up every single time I watch it. Like I get sweaty. I'm just like, oh, like it hits me in a way that like a lot of stuff in horror doesn't anymore. Like it makes me feel like I'm a kid, just like yeah. Anyway, That's my scariest bit of this movie, and I'm shocked that you guys don't agree with me on that. But
I think for me, it comes down to what was his name? Caldwell?
Calder.
Calder. The whole sequence with Calder getting turned and then him coming up the stairs and seeing the rest of our cast singing Amazing Grace. Like, it's in a way kind of corny, to be singing Amazing Grace, but I think it just works because you see him on the edge of being himself and being this anti-god husk, and then killing himself and then getting up again. Like, that worked for me very well, to have just a very visceral horror kind of reaction to it. Just it was so good. What about you, Corbin?
Yeah, mine is also Calder. I think that not that sequence though. I think that the entire part when the priest, who is unnamed, is hiding behind whatever that was.
I thought it.
Oh, you mean Father Loomis?
Yeah, but that's not what he has in the credits.
Was it not Parrish, or am I just totally wrong there? I thought that was his name.
In the credits, it just says priest. Or
right.
the priest or whatever, yeah. So when the priest is hiding there and Calder just comes and looks into the mirror and like is just crying and laughing to himself, that to me is the most horrifying part of the movie because it is the most understandably human fear. I think that there's always something that is identifiable with the concept of losing yourself 95% of the way, but not all the way, right? I mean, you can even just like link that to common mental illnesses, and like that's something that people are afraid of, right? And I think that
which is a theme of this movie.
Absolutely, I think that is the scariest thing in the movie. And also, like, from a cheesy side, the second scariest thing probably is when she reaches her hand into the mirror and starts to pull the anti-god out. That just works for me. I love that.
The other thing that kind of makes that scene with Calder so good is you basically watch the priest totally lose faith in everything the man has known for his entire life.
You see it right happen.
It's this movie's surprisingly well acted, frankly, from what I was expecting it to be.
It has a great cast.
You have to understand my expectations for most of these films are drastically lower than they probably should be, to be honest with you. Because I never know what I'm going to get. Like, when I read a title like Prince of Darkness, let's be real, I think that's kind of, I wouldn't say generic, but like, that just kind of reads to me as a very title.
So what you're telling me is John Carpenter had to really fucking hit it for this movie to be good. And he did.
I mean, he did pretty good.
Is it? Alan?
Who you sending it to? Oh, shit. So I'm going to be totally transparent here. All right? And my initial post-viewing, I have written down, but like, was it good, ? I don't know, maybe like a 2.5 or a 3. That's what I had written down verbatim. Now, before the podcast, I said to Bobby and then to Corbin, because he got on late, because, I don't know, he had things to do.
He's a dad or something.
I know, right? What a fucking dick. I said, my notes are exceedingly more positive than what my final score was. So I think I was just, I don't know, fucking stupid when I wrote that. To me, this is a 4 out of 5. I can't go to the full-blown 4.5, 5 out of 5 area because, like I said, I think there's just some things that didn't work for me as well. The whole water possession thing kind of just doesn't work for me in any capacity. But other than that, I mean, it really was... There's a lot of ambiance in this movie, a lot of details that kind of just happen. Like, you know, Jesus was an alien from space that was just getting a bit too popular, so they killed him. Which is, it's there's some throwaway lines in this movie that are just like, wait a minute, hold on a second. What did you just say?
They're not throwaway, they're key plot points.
Yes, but they're delivered in a throwaway sense because there's so many of those little bits that you just kind of get dropped throughout the whole film.
I love it also, like,
as the story
as a side
really
note,
way.
like, they bring up that Jesus was an alien, but they never go so far as to say that God is an alien. Like, they're
exactly, which is interesting in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I just think I don't really know what I was thinking.
Even so, the possessed calls to him the god plutonium.
Yeah.
You're right.
Did you? I don't know. For me, just 4 out of 5. I think it was an exceedingly fun film to watch. I guess the other thing I would say that it kind of lost a little bit for me, I am a bit of a gore fan, and really the only big bit of gore we get here, I mean, the stabbing is good with a bicycle, very inventive kill, let's be real. I didn't think I was going to see that. And the oops all bugs situation was pretty good, but that's about it in terms of gore. There's really not much here in terms of like, I guess when I think John Carpenter, I have this idea in my head that like, oh shit, maybe not necessarily the gore is going to be huge, but the kills will be interesting. And some of them were, but it just like,
you don't know John Carpenter at all.
I was going to say I would try to not expect that the next time we watch a John Carpenter movie.
Well, that's good. This is going to be some heresy here. This was my first ever John Carpenter film that I intentionally sat down to watch, because I've still not watched Halloween by choice, like actually sat down and watched it. I don't know that I've ever seen The Thing. I've seen scenes from The Thing.
You didn't say, when I said, did this movie feel like a sequel to The Thing, you didn't drop in at that moment?
I shrugged. No, I didn't know what to say at that point. But no, I look, we've been over this so many times, guys. I know nothing, frankly. And that extends even here. So I'm learning.
What I'll say is that
Bobby is in absolute disbelief.
I just assumed you'd watch The Thing based on your response to, is this a sequel to The Thing?
Look, man, put up a wall of confidence. That's what it'll do to you.
Okay, so there's one movie maybe you should expect gore from.
For this to be your first John Carpenter movie, I think is actually a very good thing. Because this movie is very much his style. It is long enough into his career that you're kind of seeing some of the advancements to his directing style and his scoring style, right? Like John Carpenter frequently directs, writes, and scores his movies. And this movie is coming out just under 10 years after Halloween. So, there are some, he's just further into his craft, right? Yeah. I think you'll probably end up liking John Carpenter a lot. I can't imagine you don't. He's one of the best horror directors of all time. It's just a fact.
One of the few to elevate the genre beyond itself. Like by modern critics. Like by me standards, there's plenty of people who have, but like by everybody else's standards, like God, praise be.
Well, Corbin, if you got so much to say, take it away, dude.
For sure. So if you're, if you're watching or listening to this, you may or may not have already read my review a couple of days ago, or weeks or months or years ago, depending on when you chose to watch this episode. But I reviewed this episode already, or this movie already, and so that I gave it a 5 out of 5. When I was writing the review, I scored it first, and then I wrote the review. And of course I have like pages of notes, right? And this week I did not write down my score in advance on my notes, which is usually what I do. And when I scored the movie on Letterboxd, I put 4.5 out of 5. And then I wrote the review, and I got to the end, and I said to myself, well, this is clearly the end of the review, and I haven't really said anything negative yet. I have to come up with something or bump it to half a point. And so I spent a few minutes and I couldn't think of anything. And so 5 out of 5. I loved it. This was my first time watching it. I thought I had seen it before. I was wrong. This was my first time and I really, really enjoyed it. This hit on all cylinders for me personally. I think that this movie is a great example of what the 80s brought to horror and what John Carpenter brings to horror. So, there you go. Bobby?
Oh, okay. Here's the thing. I went into this movie thinking, it's going to be a 5 out of 5 for me. It's gotta. Love this movie. Feel so much about this movie. Have very unique and very clear memories responding to this movie. It holds a special place in my heart. I'm biased, right? Let's go into this critically.
For the podcast?
It's my pick. Let's go into this critically, right? And I spent 90%, and we didn't even get to talk about the scene that changed my mind. 90% of this movie going, hey, this is a 4.5 out of 5. Because Walter sucks so bad. And then the scene happens where Kelly, as the son of the Antichrist, like decides we're gonna kill Walter now. And Walter's genuine, like, they're going to kill me, please, please, God, get me out of here, please, 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 God, was like, oh fuck, it's a 5 again. Because, like, it's even like you want Walter to live. You hate Walter this entire movie because he's just this annoying asshole. And you're like, I want Walter to live. I don't want him to die. He doesn't deserve to go out like that. And so, yeah, it's a 5 out of 5 for me. It like I was fully willing not to give it a 5 out of 5 for just because Walter sucks. It's like a 4.75. But Walter sucks. But then that scene happened. We never even got a chance to talk about it in the full thing. But like, yeah, it's so fucking good, dude. This movie
is a good bit of horror with them just staring at him for 8 hours.
And then they just start. And then they start to just decide to break it because like they've been told to. Like, it makes you like a character that you're wishing will bite it the entire time. It makes you immediately on his side. It's a great work. Sure. Yeah, 5 out of 5.
That's great because a lot of the other times when someone does die, it's somebody that you didn't wish that they died.
Yeah.
Probably with the exception of Wyndham, who's kind of just a dick and then dies.
Yeah. He barely counts.
Fair. But you know what, Bobby? I'd like you to just keep rolling on.
Sure.
Spoiler free, is this movie essential to the horror canon? And as a reminder, if you skipped ahead to this point, I gave it a 5, Bobby gave it a 5, Alan gave it a 4. So honestly, glowing reviews overall. Yeah. That doesn't mean it's essential. Bobby's going to let us know if it is. To him.
So, I've gone back and forth and back and forth. My knee-jerk reaction to this is no. It's not. But it is part of John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy. And the fact that it holds that place, and the fact that Big Daddy John Carpenter can do 0 wrong. Name a bad movie he's made. You can't. It just hasn't happened. What? Go ahead, say it.
So this is a movie that I used to be scared out of my pants by when I was a child. I watched it later as an adult. I didn't think it was very good. John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars. Have you ever seen that movie?
I haven't seen Ghosts of Mars.
It's not very good. It's probably his worst movie that I've seen. I've seen a lot of John Carpenter movies. It's probably the worst one.
I'm sure it's pretty good. I'm just sure
because he can't do any wrong, right? We've established this.
I'm objectively correct, and John Carpenter can do no wrong.
So we're at like an immovable object, unstoppable force situation. Bobby can't be wrong. And
Ghost
Carpenter
of Mars
can't
has to be at least decent because John Carpenter can do wrong.
What happens if you and John Carpenter disagreed on something? What would happen then?
John Carpenter can do no wrong. Bobby's not saying his opinions are always right, just that his movies are always good.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Thank you for explaining. Thank you for mansplaining for me, Daddy.
You're welcome. I'm here for that. That's why I'm on the show, actually.
Yeah. So I think I'm just gonna have to go with yes. I think it's essential. I watched this movie. I really liked it. Everybody who I've shown has this is okay. So for full transparency, non-essential spoilers for the movie, but not spoilers for previous episodes. This was the type of review that I was hoping for Beyond the Black Rainbow, and I'm just glad we got it for Prince of Darkness. And so watching this,
oh my god, I cannot go 0 and 2 on picks.
I can't. So this is kind of what I was looking for. So I'm gonna say yes, just because I feel like it exists. It's a part of horror movie canon. It's like one of those it's a weird gem that when you look at the entire trilogy, they're all really good movies, but one stands above at being, I think, the most commercially successful, but I think all three are a critical part of horror movie canon. So spoiler warning, I guess, for The Thing and In the Mouth of Madness, but
I was gonna say you kind of boxed yourself in there. I mean, you got
listen, I've watched both those movies.
Inappropriately, but it happened.
Yeah.
Alan, let's go to you.
I'm having a hard time.
Are you having a crisis of techno faith?
When I wrote down after I finished, absolutely not is basically what I wrote. Just no, straight up. And I think I'm gonna stick to no, but not as harshly as I had written it, because I just. It's not that it's not a good movie. It's not that it's not a movie that I think would be approachable. What movie was Candyman? You guys, I said essential, and I believe both of you said no. Is that correct?
For the new Candyman?
Yes, the new Candyman.
Probably.
Yeah, we did say no for a new Candyman. Yeah.
So you guys said, if I remember correctly, your one of your big points there was, what does it do to really like different or advance? And that was where I had just a core disagreement, where I was like, I don't think that matters. Well, this is a situation where I kind of get it now. I don't really know that this does anything so distinct that it warrants the tag of being absolutely essential. I don't know that it really crossed into that territory.
You know what? Name another techno faith movie.
I'm not saying that there's not another
name one. Name one. Any genre. Any genre. Go ahead and name one.
No, you're probably right that they don't exist. I don't disagree with you there.
I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying name one.
I can't. I'm not
I know you
own
can't.
up to anything that I can't own up to. But I just don't... I don't think this movie did enough to really warrant the idea of me saying, hey, random person, you gotta watch this if you're into horror. Because while this movie was scary, while this movie had aspects of horror that I think are very interesting, very cerebral, I think it's a bit harder of a connection to make to that kind of horror than some of the other things we've covered in this show. And that's kind of where it just doesn't click for me to get there. It's probably the movie I've liked the most that I also think is not essential. I think. I don't know that there's another episode or movie we've covered. Granted, I've drank since the previous episodes. So there could be some, at least once. There's something I could be forgetting just off the top of my head, but it's a movie I've thoroughly enjoyed that I just can't say is absolutely essential. I can't.
Okay.
I'm sorry to disappoint you in Big Daddy John.
So this was a tough
Look how
one.
sad Bobby is.
I know. This was a tough one for me.
It's hard, right?
I didn't write anything down. I didn't write down essential and not essential. I figured, you know what? I'm gonna coast through this and see how I feel, right? I didn't even put in the review, essential and not essential, which actually we never have, with the exception of my Dawn of the Dead review, which I said yes.
Spoiler alert for Dawn of the Dead 2004 when we inevitably cover it.
100%.
Snyder's garbage.
Anyway.
It's okay to be wrong, Bobby.
This one was tough for me because I mentioned this was my first watch, right? I've been watching horror movies my entire life. And I've seen a lot of John Carpenter movies, right? My family's huge on John Carpenter. We're a horror family, so of course I watched a ton of them. And this was one that we never watched. And I don't know that seeing it or not seeing it enhances like the knowledge of like the genre as a whole necessarily, right? I think that sometimes when we say like, oh, if something is essential, like it probably impacted a lot of things or will impact a lot of things, or when you watch something, you can say like, oh, these movies, were directly influenced by X, and that's why X is essential, right? And so after watching this, I couldn't think of anything, right? Even after watching this movie's almost 40 years old. And I couldn't go, oh, well, these other movies I've seen, they're because of Prince of Darkness. Like, they happen because of this. I couldn't say that. But I also cannot think of other movies like this. I loved the intersection of technology and faith. We've mentioned it a few times. We're all good Catholic boys on this show. It's just a fact. And that really spoke to me. I think that it made the horror a little bit stronger. And despite the fact that I can't think of anything that was directly influenced by this, maybe I'll find those movies later on. I'd love to find them. If you know of other techno-faith movies, that's my new subgenre. I'm coining it now. Please send them my way, because I want to see those. Despite that, this movie feels very unique to me. And because it's so unique, even though it didn't influence things, I have to say yes. Because it stands on its own. And so for me, I think that makes it essential, because there aren't other movies like this.
Corbin, dare
Bobby.
I say that perhaps the reason why we can't think of other techno-faith movies like this is no one dare try to outdo Big Daddy John Carpenter in a realm where he's already made the perfect movie.
I'm not against the idea. I'm also not against the idea of there being better ones. I'i'd love to know.
Yes,
that's also true.
I'm open to it now.
This idea.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I mean,
for sure. They won't do better, but I'd love to see it anyway.
Of course,
could be
like
a potentially really weird thing to say, but in a way, isn't Star Wars kind of like that?
No, but you know what it is,
Star
right?
Wars is a fantasy movie, yeah.
You know what it is, right? The Assassin's Creed games.
Okay, honestly though, yeah, that's fair.
Well,
and you know what? They even do that same thing with like sending messages like from the future, like
I know they do. I know they do. It's not great, and I don't want it to be the spiritual successor of, but it might be.
I do love Assassin's Creed. Yeah.
Hey, speaking of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, what are you guys up to? What are your handles?
I fucking love that game. All right, I'm just gonna usurp the time and take it away. I genuinely love that game, and it's one of the. I have a very specific memory of that game. I bought an Xbox 360 for the first time in, I believe I was in Cherville, Indiana, because I had my own money and my own job at that time. And I went to a GameStop and bought one of the old it was the Elite system was already out, but I didn't buy that one because I couldn't afford it. But it came with 2 controllers, a hard drive, and like Halo 3, and like 2 other games. And one of those other games was Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and I played the hell out of that game and loved it.
So this is circa 2010.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What about circa 2021?
Well, in circa 2021, I'm
still playing Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Hit me
Love
up on the
that
Ezio trilogy, boys.
But I started watching Seinfeld because it came to Netflix. I know, Bobby, it seemed like we both kind of talked about that. Or we had a moment here for you video watchers to
Season
see
3,
us talk
baby,
about
I'm already
it.
there.
Wait, is this your first time?
So every time Seinfeld came on Nick at Night when I was a kid, I would immediately skip off of it because I hated the bass intro. That was it. That was the whole reason I would just be like,
really
oh,
does
I
hate
this shit.
synth. That's not a real bass.
Yeah, hated it.
Okay, so this is your first time
watched the
going
first
front to
2
back.
episodes like a day ago, and I was like, oh, this is genuinely funny. Like, not just like the actual story bits, but even like Jerry Seinfeld's actual stand-up.
Yeah.
While some of it is definitely a little, not yikes, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a yikes, but it's like, that hasn't
Dated.
necessarily aged particularly well, your joke there, but like, his comedy is still, those stand-up bits are genuinely pretty funny still, which, hats off that it stands up fucking almost 30 years later.
His stuff is dated, not yikes. Like, there's nothing
That's
particularly
a good way to phrase it,
like, there's nothing problematic in what he does. That's like the shocking thing. Even because like they talk up like Seinfeld for the late 80s, early 90s is like shockingly progressive. Because like
that first season is like 88, 89. Like,
don't they have an episode where they're like, it's like being gay, and there's nothing wrong with that, which is like the whole kind of it's
and that's
the
an
joke,
early
but
that's
it's
an
not
early
the
season
joke.
episode. That's an early season episode. Yeah.
Like you never see Elaine and Jerry's relationship, this is the first time I've ever realized that, because the only time I've ever watched it was as a kid with my dad. Twitch.tv/TheRedWeenie, a steel punter for Alan, just so we can just get our shit off together at the same time, because we've both been watching Seinfeld.
It's on the screen, guys.
Yeah,
it's been here the whole time.
Yeah.
You could have tweeted at us while you're listening to this.
Yeah. My Twitter is linked on my Twitch.
Was correct.
I played Destiny. You know this. You've watched every episode. We gain new fans, but it doesn't matter. I love you. Mwah. If you're new, mwah. If it's your first episode, kisses. Mwah. But like fucking, like they push this idea of like falling, like leaving a relationship and becoming friends with somebody, which is like it just fucking like, it's so good. It's so good.
I want to say, I think it only works because you don't see them when they're together. The show starts with them post-relationship being friends. And so their entire relationship is told as like, oh, like, ha 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 ha, remember when we were together? And I think that's what makes it work. And like, it normalizes it, because as the viewer, you don't grow attachment to them as a couple.
It's the opposite and correct way to do that, because if you watch something like How I Met Your Mother, which without spoiling that entire show.
How many seasons is that show? 8 seasons?
Seven
show is great seasons.
Oh, no. 8 good seasons. Okay?
Whatever the last season one was terrible.
Actually, let me rephrase that. 9 seasons, or 8 seasons and like 20-something episodes, and then the last episode fucks it.
I disagree a little bit.
I loved the last season, except the last episode of that show.
The last
episode of that show to me totally destroys everything that it established for a whole however long it ran. But the point here, the greater point, is it's the correct way to do that kind of a relationship, whereas How I Met Your Mother just screws it up. And that's all.
New Girl does the How You Met Your Mother thing in a better way.
True.
I agree completely.
I like sitcoms.
Hard agree.
I like good sitcoms.
Welcome to Essential Sitcoms, guys.
Yeah.
Our side show where we talk about your favorite sitcoms
Corbin,
and ask,
what have you been
are they
up
essential?
To?
What have I been up to?
Yeah, what have you been up to?
Yeah, so I recently, I just finished Marvel What If. I've been keeping up with it. I watched all 8 or 9 episodes, however many there were. I finished it. If you haven't watched it, it's actually pretty dope. Bobby is laughing. Why?
Yeah, the bit I was going to say, Jerry Seinfeld, What If, and that was just a bit in my head that I thought was very funny.
That is funny.
What if Kramer was Jerry?
What if the Wasp movie? And so that was a pretty cool show. At first I wasn't 100% sold on it, but it totally fulfills itself by the end. Now that that's done, I'm working my way through Star Wars Visions, which is also 8 episodes, but they're only like 15 minutes long, so I'm just watching like 1 or 2 a day. And then I'm also on the side watching Buffy, of course. I'm still watching it.
Buffy Tracker 2021, let's go.
I am being pushed along through that show by producer Mallory, who decided to watch along with me, and I think it is 90% of the reason why I'm going to get through it. Even though I am enjoying it, there's so many shows that I've gotten this deep into and then just naturally fallen off of through no fault of just my own fault of not watching it. And she's
producer Mallory is always frustrated that you're not as far ahead as she is.
I know.
She has to stop, but it's also why she keeps going. Like,
right. So
it's like a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, we're like doing one of these. And then I love that you guys brought up Seinfeld. I haven't started it yet, but me and my wife we watched Seinfeld for the first time together a couple years ago. Producer Jill, and that was when it was on Hulu, and we were like, oh, we'll rewatch it eventually. And we were kind of watching it in like pieces, and then we heard that it was coming to Netflix with a brand new 4K transfer. Way into that. So I haven't, at the time of recording, started watching it again. But by the time you're listening to this, I will have. So it's kind of like I'm predicting my own future.
I wish I would have watched the show sooner, because I think it speaks to me in a way that I would have appreciated so much more earlier in life.
See, I actually disagree, and I'm glad I watched it later in life, because now everything about it is funny. And there are definitely jokes that when the situations that come up and they're hilarious to me. I think I watched the show like 2 or 3 years ago, that if I had watched it younger than that would not have been nearly as funny.
So let me tell you, as somebody who watched as a kid, because my father loved Seinfeld, because my dad, who does not listen to this podcast, so I can compliment only once, is a man of great taste. He would like watch the show, and like I would not get it. I hated it as a kid. I hated watching it as a kid, and then I watched it in like high school, at like reruns in high school. I'm like, holy shit, Seinfeld's really actually funny. My dad's smart. And now that I can like watch all of the episodes, it's really cool to see episodes like that I've noticed from early seasons, because we're not through it yet. And like Uncle Leo came up for the first time, like I'm like, Mallory, it's Uncle Leo, and it was great. Yeah.
I mean, you watched Seinfeld with your dad. I watched Chappelle's Show with my dad. You know, maybe not the show you should watch when you're like 8, but you know, it was the early 2000s.
Yeah, I watched Chappelle's Show alone.
That's right.
I watched that with my dad, surprisingly. He
Hell
also
yeah.
doesn't listen to the show, so I can say whatever I want. It's great.
Well, my parents do listen to the show, so shout out to my parents.
hello, Corbin's mom and dad. We love you very much.
Man.
At Corbangerang, by the way.
We were really great about our handles today, boys. Bobby plugged 2 of ours. Corbin just now got to his.
I know.
But where can we find the show?
You can find the show.
Tell me about it.
Anywhere. At Essential Scares. We're really active on Twitter, Instagram, and also Facebook now. So, pick your platform of choice. Follow. Each platform is ran by a different member of the crew. So comment back. You can make comments on all 3 platforms. You'll get a different answer every time. It's great.
And none of the platforms run by me.
We also have a Facebook group and a Discord. If you want to talk to Bobby, the Discord is the best way because, as he just said, he doesn't run any of the platforms.
Oh, yeah, no. So. And I will respond in Discord.
Absolutely. Yeah. But that's it for this week. I had a great time doing this one. I'm glad that everybody ended up liking it. Alan really worried us in advance.
It was, yeah. We thought it was going to be Allen Island for a bit there.
Turned out Alan is just like Alan's like a peninsula. He's still attached.
Yeah. It wasn't Bobby Island like Beyond the Black Rainbow.
Yeah. Oh man, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, share it with your friends, share it with your family. Next week we're gonna watch Scream. I have been your host, Corbin, and this has been Essential Scares.
The God breakdown won't save you, baby.
Bye-bye.
I forgot the joke. I forgot the joke I was going to say, even though
it's Jill. Oh my God.